Hey, everybody. This is your daily dose of all things royal. Oh, dear. The tide has definitely turned on Meghan Markle. Yesterday, the New York Times did a review. I'm assuming Scobie gave a copy to this journalist to do a review for the world. And unfortunately, it has come back as a dud. The New York Times in the past has been a traditional propaganda supporter. Remember the losses we shared that Meghan had given to the world around her, so-called miscarriage? Well, in this review of Scobie's Endgame, they weren't very kind in what they had to say. Let's take a look at this. Early on in Endgame, the journalist and royal commentator Omid Scobie makes an enticing promise. In the past, I, like others, have held back on revealing some of the darker truths at the heart of the institution of the British monarchy, he writes. Part of this book will burn my bridges for good, but to tell the full story, there's no holding back. Not anymore. We're in the end game. However, readers hoping for a final death blow of gossip will be disappointed. We've heard much of it before. From Fergie, from Diana, from Charles, from Harry, from Harry again. The London-based Scobie's 2020 book, Finding Freedom, Harry and Meghan and the Making of a Modern Royal Family, written with Carolyn Duran, gave a sympathetic account of the couple's exodus from Windsor, earning him the title Sussex Mouthpiece. It's a term he vociferously rejects, although it was later confirmed that Meghan had given an aide permission to brief Scobie and Duran for their book. Here, Scobie picks up with the death of Queen Elizabeth, questioning whether her hapless eldest son and his heirs have what it takes to run the family business. His book presents a critical view of palace machinations and the central players involved, and reflects on whether the monarchy should consider standing back and watching the curtain slowly close on 1,000 years of British history. Tone-deaf, racist, and financially reckless are three charges hurled at the monarchy. But when Queen Elizabeth II was at the helm, she managed to keep much of it at bay, he writes. Over the course of her umpteenth-year reign, the Queen earned a certain amount of goodwill for herself and the institution, largely because her silence and inscrutability read as comparatively dignified. With the dawn of the Carolingian era upon us, which, in the case of King Charles, may also well be its twilight, Scobie warns the Windsors must get a grip or face extinction in a Britain that's, at best, apathetic and at worst offended by the notion of inherited power. Scobie cites falling approval ratings, down to 47% after the publication of Prince Harry's Spare, and a smattering of protesters waving "Not My King" signs at Charles's public engagements. Sure, but cast our minds back to the time Charles was secretly recorded talking about becoming Camilla's tampon, which Scobie somehow manages to resist bringing up for the first 5 pages of the book, or the aftermath of Diana's death, and it's hard not to find Scobie's dire predictions a tad hyperbolic. These days, warts and all tell-all seem to be as integral to the Windsor brand as weddings, jubilees, and blockbuster funerals. And Scobie's take is not all that different from what Harry presented in Spare, or what Charles gave us 30-odd years ago in his own authorized and interminable Tale of Woe, The Prince of Wales, a biography. The new king comes in for a walloping here. As Scobie tells it, Charles is often envious of his son's popularity and lets his own petty jealousies get in the way of harnessing star power when it presents itself. His inevitable surrounding the Harry and Meghan saga has effectively turned the couple into the disruptors they were feared to become in the first place. Then there's the issue of race and unconscious bias, to use a careful phraseology borrowed from Harry. Here, Scobie sees an obvious opportunity for growth and cultural leadership, and yet the royal family's approach? Myopic at best, willfully ignoring the issue at worst. Anyone with even a passing interest in the Windsor palaver will be familiar with Scobie's descriptions of the firm's mutually parasitic dealings with the press. It's a system in which courtiers big up their royal bosses by briefing, leaking, and anonymously sourcing against one another in the pursuit of public favor. Father against son, brother against brother, duchess against duchess. Now, I'm not shocked by this next paragraph. It's almost expected Scobie would include this. The book picks up pace when Scobie engages in the kind of tabloid fodder he makes us all feel guilty for wanting, such as Prince William's rumored affair with the, oh boy, yep, a rumor he doesn't do much to dispel. Scobie reveals that a Kensington Palace aide tried to enlist his help in diverting the Sun newspaper away from the affair by offering up excerpts from Finding Freedom. I had zero interest in collaborating with the tabloid, Scobie writes. Much of Scobie's new book is devoted to setting the record straight on petty slights against the Sussexes, exactly who made whom cry at a dress fitting, the double standards applied to royal bridezillas brandishing air freshener. Let the record show that when Kate filled Westminster Abbey with Joe Malone for her wedding, it was sweet. Speaking of Kate, she didn't fare well in Finding Freedom, and neither does she here. Scobie obliquely accuses the princess, presented as cold and lacking in self-assurance, of copying Meghan's efforts' dress sense. Oh, God. And he notes that Kate's Hold Still lockdown photo project is reminiscent of Meghan's 2018 Together cookbook, a project she did with survivors of the Grenfell fire. The tabloids have rightfully been accused of pitching one royal bride against another, and so it jars when Scobie, whose tone throughout is one of moral high ground, employs a similar tactic. He does, however, give Kate, who Scobie notes does actually like that nickname, credit for finally relaxing into her role. After all, he knows there's a genuine Kate there because he once witnessed her descend into a fit of muted giggles at the sight of a rhino pooping while on a mini safari in India. Hard to say if this is a feeble attempt at humanization or a skilled way of letting us know that he, Scobie, was the only reporter invited along. Whether or not Scobie actively collaborated with Meghan and Harry for this book, he does them no favors. Their chapter reads like a press release cooked up by ChatGPT and does little to shed light on them as humans. He says the couple, who used to focus on coverage of themselves, now remain blissfully unconcerned. Okay. Harry's next chapter will focus, among other things, on philanthropic efforts in the military space, while Meghan, and here Scobie quotes an unnamed source, is building something more accessible, something rooted in her love of details, curating, hosting, life's simple pleasures, and family. We know for sure that that quote was given by Meghan, of course. She uses that buzzword, rooted. I can't tell you how many times she's said that in her word salad, but that's Meghan right there. And to have the audacity to say it's also focusing on family, look what she's done to both sides of the family. Like, this woman is sick. Scobie defines the term endgame as the final stages of a chess game after most of the pieces have been removed from the board. Unless Charles and his heirs act quickly, Scobie underscores they risk losing the crown, or, at the very least, any remaining cultural relevance. But there's a paradox here. As long as people are buying books like Scobie's, they are buying the whole lousy operation. Not a good start for Scobie on this book. The New York Times is supposed to be left-leaning, supportive of all this woke nonsense. So for them to be critical on this in this manner, you know it's bad. And tomorrow when it's released, it's going to backfire even worse on to Meghan and Harry because we know that all roads connect back to these two. And the fact that Omid Scobie was very light on not talking about Meghan and Harry shows that the intention of this book was to purposely attack the family in efforts to tear down the monarchy. And we all know backing that is Meghan and Harry, particularly Meghan. So Meghan doesn't look too good in this light because she's trying to distance herself, but at the same time continue to attack the family. Like, people are not stupid. And we will not believe anything that comes out of Scobie's mouth because he's already proved himself to be a liar. He's already lied about collaborating with Meghan. So this shouldn't be any different. I am glad to see that the New York Times is somewhat coming to their senses about the duplicitous duo, but I think we have a lot of work to go. I mean, ABC is still pushing their propaganda, so is CBS. And as long as they have the likes of Tyler Perry, Gayle King, Oprah backing them, these false narratives or propaganda will continue to be pushed. What's interesting is every time there's some type of book release, it's always being focused on the royal family. I kind of wish there would be a royal biographer who would do a deep dive and focus on Meghan's family, because that's the story that needs to come out, in my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think tomorrow Scobie's going to get raked over the coals? I do. I can't wait for it, and I'll be reporting on it. As you know, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It was such a fraud.